Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Joe Emilio Show. I am back in full swing of things. In case you missed it, check out the new Newsflash episode, which was just released before I went live. Go check it out. Thank you for those of you that have tuned in. It's really great to see some familiar faces. We have Jesse, who's back with us, Valerie, Dylan, Gavin, Voots, and Ruben Alexander, who I think might be a first-time watcher, I'm not sure, or at least it's the first time I'm seeing you on a live stream, so thank you for tuning in. Ladies and gentlemen, interesting topics to talk about tonight with my guest, Martin Van Staden, who is part of the Free Market Foundation, but I'll let him introduce himself nicely as soon as I bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Martin Van Staden.
Hey, Joe. Yeah, thanks for having me. I think it's the first time on your show. It's great to be here.
It's actually the second time on my show.
Okay.
You were
Yeah,
part of a group discussion way back when. I think it was still
yes,
during
yes.
lockdown, I think.
Uh, oh, What's that? Jeez. It was 2019 and then 2022. I don't know anything about any years in between.
Yeah, exactly, man. I feel the same way. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna let Martin just tell very briefly what exactly it is you do at the Free Market Foundation.
Yeah, I'm the head of policy at the Free Market Foundation. We are a classically liberal think tank, or a libertarian think tank, you could say. Our values are the promotion and advocacy for individual liberty, private property rights, free enterprise, the market economy, and limited constitutional government. And really, what we do, and I play a big role in kind of the policy aspect of that, is monitor really what government is doing as regards these principles. Is it trying to curb people's freedoms? Is it trying to restrict economic activity? And then we make a big kerfuffle about that. So that's on the policy side. And then we also encourage people to kind of engage in more state proofing and so on. So our business is ideas related to freedom. And that's we're trying to propagate that in a society that has a very long history of unfreedom, and trying to get us to a future of liberty and really prosperity ultimately.
Fantastic. I'm a huge fan of the Free Market Foundation, of you and David Ansar. I've known David Ansar for quite a while now. And I like what you guys have done with the Free Market Foundation. Speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, I have linked Martin's X account in the description, as well as a link to Free Market Foundation's website and Section 12, which is an initiative we're going to talk about during this conversation, which also now brings me to the topics for tonight. The title of this stream really talks to South Africa at the moment, and I think Martin has been quite vocal on X with his opinions about the general, government of national unity. So I want to pick his brain a bit about that, and then we're going to talk a little bit about federalism. Then we're going to talk about the Section 12 initiative, and then we will end off with talking about the Renaldo Gouws debacle, but a specific aspect of it that I think is very interesting and tells a lot about maybe South Africa's priorities and where society is at the moment. So all that is coming up. So for those of you that are just tuning in, thank you so much. Don't forget to leave a like, share the stream far and wide, and join the conversation in the live chats, please. I do keep an eye on the live chats. I make notes of who asks questions for my guests, so I will try and have a Q&A session very briefly at the end of this conversation, or even maybe, if there's a really good question, I'll pop it up very quickly and we'll tackle it. So let's move into it. Martin, GNU. You and I have chatted, privately and publicly about this. I had a lot of questions for you when it was first announced, and you seem not too excited as some South Africans would be, and rightfully so. I'm not excited about it either, to be honest. But please, let's start from here. I think what I would really like to ask you, and this is just me picking your brain, really. What is next? So the president's been inaugurated. When do we start hearing about who's minister of this and minister of that? Is that in the next coming weeks, few days? And then we can get into, the details of the GNU.
Yes. So previous presidents have actually announced their cabinets, I think, within hours of being inaugurated. So it's supposed to be quite quick. I think the exception was I think it might have been Ramaphosa's first term when kind of the Ramaphoria and the kind of uncertainty. I think that took maybe a few days. But I think this time around, it's certainly going to take a bit longer, especially now. It's now in the news that the partners in the GNU are they're not agreeing on how the GNU agreement is to be interpreted. So I think it's gonna maybe take a few days.
Big surprise.
If the GNU survives that long, which
Oh,
is by no means a guaranteed, but yeah, maybe a few days at this stage. But yeah, it can't be too long because we now find ourselves in a very odd kind of situation where the constitution says that your previous cabinet, your previous ministers and deputy ministers, they remain ministers until the day of the inauguration of the president. So currently we're basically without a cabinet, and yeah, you don't want to be in that situation for too
oh
long.
my word. Okay, I didn't know that. So are you saying there's technically no government in a way? Like,
Yeah, I mean, sure. So the old cabinet, I think, is still kind of sticking
okay,
around, but their term has kind of officially ended now, and it's
okay,
now we're in a situation that it shouldn't work this way, and there's
yeah.
many kind of such situations given how our constitution didn't really foresee the type of politics that is playing out right now. But yeah, I'm sure we'll be fine as far as that is concerned. But yeah, the whether the GNU survives or not, that's the big question for me, at least for the
Well,
next
yeah,
few.
I want to get into that now. So the GNU, you and FMF have written PRs, and you've often vocalized your opinion, basically, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically saying that GNU or even a DA ANC coalition will just not last. Um, I would tend to agree with you. I mean, I was being cautiously optimistic, if I can say that, by thinking that maybe the GNU would last maybe 2 years. It wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
last full term, just maybe 2 years, two and a half, halfway, and then DA would break away, or whatever happens to DA happens to DA, and then we might be in a situation where the ANC would, then join MK or EFF or both. I don't know. So yeah, what are your thoughts? Why are you so, I don't know, unpatriotic?
No, look. So I don't want people to think that I'm kind of I want things to go wrong. That's kind of how it often comes off if one says, yeah, this just can't work, just leave it. And people are like, you enjoy the pain and so on. No, I very much want something like the GNU to work. I think it's a very nice, neat idea that we bring together parties from across the political spectrum, and they kind of sit together rationally, and they kind of debate issues where there is disagreement and so forth. That would be awesome. That'll be great. That is the South Africa that I really desire in my heart of hearts. But now I've been warning against coalition with the ANC since 2022, when it kind of became clear that South Africa's future is coalition politics, and it's kind of, so there was the new National Party, not to be confused with the first government of national unity in the mid 1990s. That one fell apart, of course, but then the new National Party kind of also had a coalition later in the early 2000s with the ANC. They ended up merging into the ANC, and what happened to them, I think, is currently starting to happen here. And why I warned against this kind of thing since 2022 is that, listen, if we know the ANC, it's a known quantity. It's a it's not a traditional political party, as many analysts have pointed out over many years. It is a mass movement, really a revolutionary entity that, in a certain way, sees itself as entitled to govern South Africa, and it will not engage kind of with the normal rules and these decorum that you would expect between normal political parties. Something you really see from the DA, for instance, which I would say is very much a normal political party. It functions well, everyone is professional, and so on. That is not the ANC. The ANC sees itself as divine by God to govern. And yeah, so what I've been warning against for many years now is that if you, as a well-intentioned opposition party, go into a coalition with the ANC as a minority partner, you will be co-opted. So that means that your name will be used against you. You will be used to implement ANC policy. Your policy will certainly not feature anywhere. And you will ultimately also be expected, of course you will, to excuse the corruption that the ANC, that is basically the raison d'etre of the ANC. The only reason the ANC works is because of its huge patronage networks. And then if you get involved in trying to stop that, that will collapse the coalition. But so you'll have to excuse it. You have no choice if you want the coalition to function. And as a constitutionalist, as someone who believes in limited government, I think it's important to have a strong opposition, certainly in South Africa's radicalizing politics. And so I don't want the opposition to be co-opted and to become part of the ANC ecosystem. I wanted to stand there and defend democracy, the constitution, and the rule of law. And now we have lost that. We've certainly lost that, at least for these few days now. I don't think the GNU will last for the reasons that I set out. I don't think the DA has the wherewithal really to say, okay, listen, we'll kind of excuse their corruption and let it play out in the interest of kind of keeping this government in place and keeping the EFF and MK out. I think the DA very much is going to say, listen, we can't allow this corruption to happen. And the ANC is not allowing us to address it, so we will leave the coalition. I think the GNU is probably going to collapse sooner now over much smaller topics. As I mentioned earlier, this interpretation about the GNU agreement, whether all the parties have to be consulted, it almost seems like the wheels are already coming off. So yeah, I've been warning against this, not because I don't want it to happen, but because I think there's other priorities. Like keeping a strong opposition.
And speaking about the opposition, by the way, all your arguments are sound, and in a way, you're being proven right as we speak. So, but I think also another thing or another aspect that maybe people forget about is, like you just said, the DA was the opposition. Right now, they're part of the government, and effectively, the EFF and MK are now the opposition parties, right? And that I think doesn't bode well for a GNU when you have a socialist government, the ANC, which is still a majority within that GNU, right? Then you have a centrist party, leans, I don't know, arguably more right or more left, but is centrist. They say they're centrist. Definitely doesn't agree with a lot of the policies that the ANC is setting out. So there's that, and they're going to have conflict. But now imagine a scenario where you're in Parliament, you're debating a bill to be put through or whatever, or want votes on this bill or whatever legislation or whatever they want to push through, but you have radical opposition parties that can probably really disrupt DEA's attempt to prevent the rot from happening. Because I think the DA was campaigning, let's save South Africa. Now they kind of changed their tone. This is the best option for us. We're going to try and change it. We're going to try and help the ANC or whatever, the kind of lingo they use. But everybody's forgetting that, EFF, MK are just on the sidelines. And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Martin, but couldn't they be quite a thorn in the government's or, the DA's attempt to save South Africa?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, the opposition is important in our system, even if they don't have a majority, obviously, then they're not the opposition. And I think Herman Pretorius of the Institute of Race Relations, he made a very kind of good argument in favor of the DA remaining in opposition, but giving the ANC confidence and supply, which is what the Free Market Foundation also supported, which is basically to say, the DA says, we're not going to join your government for all the reasons that I set out. It's a bad idea, but we don't want the EFF or MK in government. We also want a stable kind of government that doesn't get replaced every few months and then we have a new president every few months. We don't want that. So we'll keep the ANC in government as a minority government by giving them confidence and supply. And very basically, that means we will elect the ANC's presidential candidate. We will keep that cabinet that the ANC appoints in government, so we will not vote against it in votes of no confidence, and we will approve the annual state budget. But other than that, we are not involved. We remain the opposition. So in favor of that, one of the arguments that Armand Pretorius made, which I think is correct, is that the DA is a well-intentioned opposition. So the DA fundamentally, even though it's always opposed to the ANC, has never been like almost like a rebel group, right? It's never denied the legitimacy of the ANC government. It has never said that these are a bunch of treasonous kind of criminals who must be removed by force or anything like that. The DA has seen itself as an opposition entity to the government. It is constructive. It says that the government is doing this wrong. It should instead be doing this. So that's kind of a constructive opposition in a democratic society. The the EFF, and I think we haven't seen MK in action, but I think given what the Bizan and so on tweet, you can have a reasonable idea of how they're going to behave. These are not parties that are constructive, mature, well-intentioned opposition. These are the kinds of people who will storm the stage while the president is speaking. These are the kinds of people who will throw chairs at the ministers. These are people who will shout down. These are people who will say, listen, we'll bring the country to a complete standstill if we do not get what we want. That is not constructive and kind of well-intentioned opposition. That is a group of people who, like the ANC, think that, listen, we exist and therefore we must govern because, well, we said so. And anything that stands in our way must just be kind of set aside. It's that kind of very, very dictatorial entitlement. So yes, having MK, which MK is now the official opposition in South Africa. Jacob Zuma is the unofficial leader of the official opposition. I'm not sure who the leader of the official opposition is yet. It was going to be that Jabulani guy, but no one really knows now. But they are now the official opposition. These are the people who are going to be asking what needs to be the pertinent questions of government ministers. But now it's, I think, relatively clearly going to be a total circus. So when they should be asking, listen, this expenditure, was this approved? Is it going to the right places? I don't think the MK is going to be asking those kinds of questions. They're going to be grandstanding. They're going to be ignoring everything that they need to be caring about, like corruption and so on, and focusing on the most idiotic nonsense that you can imagine. So, yeah, we do have an opposition now, but I don't think that helps us much. I think the closest thing right now that we have to real opposition is Action SA. The ACDP and the Freedom Front Plus, kind of, it's not clear whether they're going into the GNU or not. But these are very tiny, tiny parties. So I think South Africa now finds itself in an odd place. I'm happy about the optimism. I don't want to kind of rain on anyone's parade. I like it that the markets are reacting positively. So things are not falling apart. But we are without an opposition. And that is only not a problem until it becomes a huge problem. And I don't want us to be in that position.
Yeah, and I think I would agree. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to see how this all pans out. Whether or not the GNU survives, we'll see. Before I bring up another important question, I just want to address some of the chats that are coming in. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're just joining me right now, I have Martin Van Staden from the Free Market Foundation. We're discussing a lot of topics tonight, so please stay tuned. Some interesting things being discussed. And I want to also say a thank you to Gavin, who gave me a very generous, we call it Sasa Chats on this channel, 140 Rand Sasa Chat. Thank you so much. He says, welcome back, joining us. Thank you so much for that, Gavin. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you're feeling generous, please give a Sasa Chat or a Snap, what's it called? Super Chat, sorry. And yeah, it goes a long way to supporting me and this channel. Seeing a lot of familiar faces. Robert King, who says FF Plus has announced they will join the GNU. So there we go. very quickly on that, Martin, do you think that's useful? Do you think AFF Plus being part of that is going to make any difference, or what?
It, yeah, look, so it's not the first time the Freedom Front Plus has been part of an ANC coalition,
Mm.
and they pulled it off the previous time. So it's I'm not in principle opposed to kind of going into a coalition of the ANC, but you kind of need to know the beast and you need to know how to ride the beast. They've done it before. I don't think they abandoned their principles. I think they kept on fighting for Afrikaans and so on, and they managed to get it right. And I know in the Northern Cape they formed would it be a PNU? Not quite. They gave confidence and supply to the ANC there in exchange for a chairmanship of the local government portfolio committee. And for currently, they're just saying recognition for Orania. I'm not sure what that means yet, but yeah, I mean that I think that was a good move. But yeah, I'm not too worried about the Freedom Front Plus, except to the extent that now the opposition would be even weaker. You simply cannot be an opposition from inside the government. It's not possible.
Yeah. All right. So speaking about Orania, no, I'm kidding. I won't go there. All right. So the one question I had for you as well, speaking about still on the topic of GNU before we move on, I think it's something very important to also mention is like the DA, again, their campaign was all about, save South Africa. It was very interesting because leading up to the elections, when people would say that, oh, you guys are going to join the ANC, they were very quick to say, no, we're not.
Fake news.
Yeah. And then, the election results come out and they're like, we're going to join the ANC because it's the best option we have. So it's like, okay. But anyway, regardless of that, I think an important thing from my observation, you can disagree or say you agree or give your opinion. I think the DA has a lot riding on this, more than maybe some people realize. Like, you campaigned to save South Africa. That was your big campaign. Now you're in it. Now you're in government, right? Now you got to deliver. Even if it's like, even if in the next 5 years, let's just pretend for a second that the GNU doesn't break up and everything's going okay. The GNU doesn't break up in the next 5 years. The DA has to prove that they have done everything they can to at least even marginally improve South Africa. The unemployment rate needs to decrease a hell of a lot. Load shedding needs to be a thing of the past. That's crime needs to be dealt with. Those are just three of the main things I can think of that really, really need to be sorted out and improved. And I think that if the DA can pull that off, highly unlikely, but if they can pull it off, then okay, cool. I think a lot of us will accept, GNU, maybe not a bad idea, whatever, and DA were sticking to their promises now. But what if they don't? What if they can't? What if they break up? The DA is either going to be eaten up alive, right, by the ANC, as you mentioned. The ANC is built on this whole corruption syndicate, right? So they either become a part of it, right? It reminds me of that Batman quote: "You live long enough to You live long enough to die a hero, or see yourself become the enemy," or something like that.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mean, that could be the situation for the DA, right? So, your thoughts on that? Do you think the DA has immense pressure now to deliver, or do you think they'll survive even if they don't?
This is one of it's an extremely complicated question. So yes, if the GNU ends right now or tomorrow, I think the DA comes out of it relatively unscathed. I think then things are okay. The longer it exists, the more this complication kind of entrenches itself and grows. So let's assume the DA does not get co-opted. Let's assume the DA stays the DA, a classically liberal party that's against corruption, and the GNU survives. Now, that that cannot happen. But let's assume, just for the sake of argument, that it does. Now, the GNU doesn't work for 5 years. It's just failure after failure after failure. It's corruption that the DA is fighting against, but just can't address. Come the 2029 elections, the DA is gone. There's nothing left. there's no more DA after that election. I think the ANC will also kind of disappear at around the same time, but the DA is gone. Now, the other option is everything goes absolutely wonderfully. Everything is excellent. Come 2029, I don't see that as benefiting primarily the DA either. I think that if the last while is anything to go by, it is that the DA has decided not to communicate about what is happening. And I think one of the articles, I think Tony Leon wrote it. And I think he said that it was kind of agreed that they're not going to take a step, they're not going to live tweet the negotiations, basically. They're not going to say, we're talking about this and this. And I think it's not a new thing for the DA. They like to kind of have internal discussions relatively close to their chest. And then when they've made a decision, then there's the big fanfare. Now, that means to me that you're not going to see if, let's say, the DA Minister of Housing is now responsible for kind of resolving the housing backlog, for instance. I don't see the DA saying, "Oh, it's us." No, it's not the ANC. Give us the credit. I don't think they'll do that. I think that they, as a matter of honor, will think, no, we can't. I mean, it's a team effort. It's the government. Now, if you don't take credit for these things, why do you think that if GNU succeeds in these 5 years, that people will reward you rather than the ANC, which is the majority party? We shouldn't assume that people are just gonna think about this in that rational sense and be like, oh, okay, the ANC has always failed and now it's succeeding. Well, clearly it's the DA. That's not how I don't think that's how it's going to play out. So that becomes very complicated. So that tells me that there is no good way out for the DA on this. One of the sad kind of possibilities is that this does in fact lead to a merger. If this thing goes well, if the DA and the ANC can work together, they can. But if they see that they can, I think that leads to a merger. We've seen this throughout South African history on parties that form coalitions in the 20s, in the 30s, even in the 40s, and then again in the early 2000s. The parties merge, and I think that'll be a damn shame, because I don't really see what comes as the alternative to that. So I mean, just speaking for myself. Even at the FMF, we have disagreements about how this thing will play out, even though we're kind of on the same page about we prefer confidence and supply and we want a strong opposition. But speaking for myself, I think it's best if the GNU collapses immediately, if it collapses now. I know the markets are going to be upset and it's not going to be Ramaphoria 2.0, but that at least gives us the opportunity again to go for confidence and supply, which remains a viable option. And the ANC was open to confidence and supply. They told the DA, according to Carol Payton, the journalist, that the ANC told the DA, hey, please give us confidence and supply. And the DA said, no, we want a coalition. And that, I think, was a mistake.
Wait, that's interesting. The DA declined the confidence and supply.
That's what Carol Payton says. That I can't confirm whether that in fact happened. I don't think she'll be able to make something as specific as that up, but that's what she says, and I find that to be worrying. But at least the ANC is open to an idea of confidence and supply. And I think if GNU collapses now, I mean, let's say keep the name Government of National Unity. Say we are carrying on with this thing, but the DA has decided to not go into cabinet. It's going to take over some portfolio committees in Parliament, and it's going to fulfill the role of opposition. I mean, anyone with kind of relatively clear kind of consciousness about politics will know that the coalition is over and that the GNU is a PR stunt. But at least then the damage that could happen to the opposition over the next 5 years will be limited. And yeah, then we still have a strong opposition now. The ANC can govern kind of as it has been, which isn't great. I mean, it's certainly not what we would have wanted after this election, but it's far better than having coalitions that collapse and come together, and then the EFF is part of the government and they elect I don't know, Paul Mashatile as president, and then there's a falling out, and then he's no longer president. Now Cyril is back, and the DA is back in government with the ANC, and now it's MK and and the PA and so on. You don't want that. That's chaos. So keep a minority ANC government in place, and let's try again in 5 years, 2029, when I think the ANC is kind of toast at this rate, and let's go into that election with a coherent, strong, good opposition, rather than going into that with a fractured, destroyed DA. I think that would be the worst thing.
And last question on this whole GNU thing, as I guess is yes or no, but is there a scenario where maybe some people from the DA, MPs and whatnot, break away from the DA? Like they've seen the ANC take over the DA, the rot is infecting the DA, and some MPs are like, you know what, I'm out of this, and maybe a whole new party is formed. With hopefully the logical liberal faction of the DA. Yes. Do you think that would be a possibility, and do you think like a good idea in a way? Or maybe not a good idea is the right way to put it, but like would almost save face, if I can put it that way.
So yeah, I think it's important to have a good liberal party in parliament. Yeah. So in that sense, I think it would be an awesome idea to have a principled, almost libertarian-esque party in parliament. I don't think it's likely, because if they do break away, and they certainly can, and it's certainly possible, they will not keep their seats in parliament. So if they break away, they will have to resign from parliament, and they will have to then start campaigning for the next election and hope that they can secure votes. And that's certainly, it's not impossible. I think there's potential there, but yeah, it's we had floor crossing in South Africa in the early 2000s, which was basically put in place so that the new National Party could merge into the ANC, but it also led to other types of floor crossings. We don't have that anymore. So now, if you leave your party, if you resign from your party, then your party headquarters is going to tell Parliament to remove you from the register. So yeah, a few MPs from what I've kind of seen have said in the past that if the DA ever were to go into a coalition with the ANC, they will leave. They haven't done so yet. So I don't think.
Yeah, they're all making me look bad. It was one of my predictions.
Yes. Well, I mean, yeah, I also thought that it was reasonably likely to happen. It hasn't, and I yeah, if look, there's a few scenarios here. If it's clear that the ANC is just going to drag the DA along and just co-opt it, but the party itself is kind of taking it and being like, okay, we're going along for it, then I'm certain a whole bunch of DA people are going to leave and say, listen, this is just a joke right now. But that's not happening. I think the more likely outcome is that there will be a split in the GNU, and the DA will leave. My kind of hope now is that will be an amicable split, that it's not kind of this big explosion, this spat that drives the ANC into the arms of the EFF or MK, and rather that they just say, listen, we tried this, we have kind of irreconcilable differences, let's kind of leave it there, we're going back into the opposition, and we're going to give you confidence and supply, we'll keep Ramaphosa as president, and we'll continue being this constructive, kind of well-natured opposition. And then I think we have a relatively good 5 years on our hands, and then the next election. That's the kind of the least bad future currently that I think is quite possible, I think.
Least bad. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, there's no best scenario, as people are saying.
No, I mean on that, just so a lot of people, I think in the hours before the election, and certainly now after the election, it was almost kind of like they said, well, this is
the best.
We kind of win by default. It's like we now will have good government because this election and the ANC is now under 50%. What I've been saying is, listen, this has not been that election. That election might still come, but the 2024 general election was not that election.
Yeah.
We need to be patient again.
Yeah.
And things I think are good. I think it's good that the ANC is under 50. It shows that our democracy works. The ANC accepted defeat. I think that's a wonderful sign of maturity on its part. I think we have reason to be relatively proud of our kind of the wherewithal of our political system. So let's be patient. We give it another 5 years. Another 5 years certainly of some decay. But yeah, a lot of that decay is due to the inaction, I think, of businesses, of ordinary communities that are still waiting for the government to solve their problems. And then you kind of invite decay. So rather spend the next 5 years building up your family, building up your community, and then the next 5 years wouldn't be of decay; it would be of real growth, even if we have a bad government.
Yeah, you sound very optimistic in those statements. I don't listen, man. To quote a friend of ours, Sichle Ngobeze, Big Daddy Liberty, never trust a commie, man. Never trust a commie. That's all I gotta say.
It's true.
All right, so moving on swiftly, ladies and gentlemen, just to remind everybody, there's been a few more people joining in. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We just discussed the GNU, and we're going to discuss other topics, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to discuss federalism. We're going to discuss Section 12, an initiative from FMF. And I see already in the live chats the final topic, which is Renaldo Gouws dominating in the chats already. But just hang in there. We will get to that. We're going to discuss a very interesting aspect of what has been happening around that story, which I think you guys are going to want to stay tuned and discuss that with us. So moving on to the next topic, which is not going to be a very long one. I think it's going to be a very straightforward topic, but I want to bring it up because, we're talking about new governments now. The FMF before the elections had this campaign and this initiative called Section 12, where you encouraged people to go to the Section 12 website and sign a pledge, which would basically send a letter to a politician of their choosing. You had a list of politicians that people could choose and select and send to more than one politician or whatever. And it was a letter basically demanding that the new government, in whatever form it takes, puts crime at the top of its agenda. I think it's a very important initiative, but why don't you explain to people why South Africans should care about Section 12?
Yeah, so I mean, let's start at the name. So Section 12 refers to Section 12 of the South African Constitution, which says that everyone has a right to be free from all forms of violence, both public and private. So that's kind of a straightforward statement that, listen, we have a constitutional right to be free of the immense crime that we face and also of government abuse. Yet, despite that, South Africa is, I think, probably one of the top 5 most violent societies in the world. Forget about all the other crimes. I'm talking about violent crime. We have about 86 reported murders every single day in this country. That's almost 100 people killed intentionally every single day in this country, reportedly. And then we have about, I think, 5 rapes every single hour in this country. Again, reported rapes, and only 1 in 9 rapes are in fact reported. So quite a large number of violent crimes, and our trio crimes, house robberies, business burglaries, hijackings, these are also amongst the highest in the world. Yet we have this constitutional right to be free of these things. It's clear that we've normalized violent crime in this country. It's another news story. Some papers have even stopped printing big crime stories because, well, it's just another day in South Africa to have these war zone levels of violence. And we at the FMF, we thought, geez, clearly this thing needs more attention. A lot of people certainly talk about crime in politics, but it's basically it's the kind of talk you'll see in a safe society as well. If you really think about it, people say that, well, our police need to be better resourced. We need to appoint more police officers. and we felt that that doesn't really get to the bottom of this. That's a very kind of superficial way to address it. And our initiative said that, listen, we are classical liberals, and we think classical liberalism has answers here. And so we organized 5 Ds about how to address crime in South Africa. And the first one is definition. We have a very big problem of defining what crime is in this country. It's not only a problem in South Africa, but given our huge violent crime problem, it's important to address it here. And that means that we need to make sure everyone knows really what is a criminal act, rather than just kind of having it assumed and revealed to us after we're arrested that you in fact committed a crime. So we have a definition issue, and to that end, the Free Market Foundation proposed to Parliament that it should adopt a criminal code, which basically lists all the crimes that are recognized in South African law. And makes it accessible to ordinary South Africans so that they can know what is a crime and what isn't a crime. That's definition. The second D is development. This is the kind of the easy one. And it's basically to say we do need more police, but not only more police, we need better police. We need far more prosecutors. It's actually insane how few prosecutors we have to deal with 86 murders every single day. So we need more of that. But the one thing that we really kind of honed in on is that we need more prisons, far more prisons in this country, because our prisons are overfull. And yet most of the people who should be in prison are not in prison yet, because we don't have high conviction rates. So if we assumed for a moment that we arrested all the murderers and rapists in South Africa, we do not have nearly enough prison capacity for that. And to that end, we have sent correctional services, promotion of access to information act requests, just to understand who is in our prisons. Are our prisons full of jaywalkers and people who have been arrested for parking tickets? If so, then that's a problem, and we need to get them out of prison very, very quickly so that we can make more room for people who belong there. And which prisons are being built, if any? We don't get the sense that many large capacity prisons are being built. So that's development. Then the third D is decentralization. This has been in the news kind of for a while now in South Africa. I think it's going to take a back seat now, but nonetheless, we do believe that there should be significantly more decentralization of the policing function, whether that takes the form of devolution, which is the central government allowing municipalities and provinces to do more, or whether those municipalities and provinces just do it themselves and decide we won't ask for permission, federalization, you could say. But not just to municipalities and provinces, also to communities and also to commercial enterprises. There needs to be that kind of decentralization as well to allow security guards, for instance, to more easily perform arrests and to kind of deal with that in a relatively appropriate fashion, and also neighborhood watches and so forth to make it easier for these things to do the things that are necessary to protect themselves in their communities. So that's decentralization. It kind of speaks for itself. A small part of that is also you have to allow civilians to more easily acquire firearms and so forth. And then the final D, which is the one I think the Free Market Foundation and classical liberals feel the strongest about, and it's the one we think would have the highest impact to address violent crime, is decriminalization. So our prosecutors are focusing on a wide variety of crimes, thousands of crimes that are on the book. These include recording people on your cell phone and then sharing that to a WhatsApp group without being registered with the Films and Publications Board. You have now distributed a film. That means you've committed a crime. That means that a prosecutor has to be assigned to you and to put you in jail for a few months. That I don't think that happens, but the fact is there are many such crimes that prosecutors are spending time on.
And we think, doesn't that also make, like, come on, dude, that you've done that, I've done that. People watching this right now have done that. So we're all
everyone
criminals.
Watching this video is a crime, is a criminal. Yes, and it's not just that. There's the reality, and this comes back to definition, is that we are such an over-criminalized society that it really doesn't matter how much of a goody two-shoes you are. You are a criminal. I mean, that's just guaranteed. There is no question about it. Like, don't even think about it. You are a criminal. Done. And we want decriminalization to make sure that that's no longer the case. So there's various, I mean, the big things that people often think about, which we also support, is that you should decriminalize prostitution, you should decriminalize the distribution of drugs, and so on. I'm a teetotaler. I don't do drugs. I don't think it's a good idea, but I don't think people should be in prison for doing it either. But yeah, there's thousands of these things. And the intention here is we have to clear the decks for the police and for prosecutors so that they're not spending time in this high crime, high violent crime society, spending time going after I don't know, yeah, the guy who records people on the phone. If you have a taxi business and you go to Messina, which is near the border of Zimbabwe, and you transport people from Messina to Pretoria, but you aren't registered with there's a cross-border authority in South Africa, then you have committed a crime because you are transporting people to and from nearby an international boundary. That's a crime in South Africa if you're not registered with that entity. So you could have a totally registered taxi business. It's all above board. You have a business license and everything, but you forgot to register with that one authority. Prison. You're going to prison. So we don't want prosecutors to be spending time on nonsense like that. So yes, we've recommended to Parliament and to provincial legislatures. The provinces also create a lot of crimes in their provincial legislation, and municipalities, which have bylaws, which also create crimes. We've said, listen, stop it and decriminalize significantly. If something doesn't have a tangible victim and a tangible harm to their life, liberty, or property, you must either totally decriminalize that thing, or you must make it a civil wrong, in which case that person must sue them and kind of go to court and go through a process. But do not have police and prosecutors and prison cells dedicated to dealing with that thing. So that's, in a nutshell, our Section 12 initiative. It's still carrying on. It was focused on getting violent crime onto the election agenda. But now certainly we want the new government, or the many new governments that we might see over the next 5 years. We do want them to put violent crime high on the agenda, and we will continue to lobby for that.
Sorry, had a bit of a technical issue there. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring it up during this live stream, because I think it's a very important initiative. Just one more question on that initiative. So one of the things that when I talk to people about this initiative, and I say, go sign the pledge, have your voice heard and all that stuff, a lot of people are like, okay, it's cool that it's going to the inbox of the politician, right? But how exactly is it going to force them to make crime the number one on their agenda? Like, is the FMF going to, I don't know, what are you guys going to do to make sure that, okay, cool, emails are sent, but what if eventually the politicians are ignoring it, or that you don't hear anything from them saying, crime is now at the top of, like, do you have any plans on that? Is there something you can reassure the people that, like, hey, we're going to keep on pushing this?
Yeah, no. So the one example that I gave is that we are currently, for our lawyers, engaging with the Department of Correctional Services. We've sent them legally binding documents. They have to answer us about who is in our prisons. Now they've already sent us some of that data. It's totally insufficient. It's not nearly all that we asked for, but they are engaging, and they have to engage. It's the law, and if they don't engage, then we can take further legal steps. Now, on our agenda is to kind of follow the same process at some point with the National Prosecuting Authority. We want to know, what are your guidelines for prosecuting, or for KPIs for prosecutors? And kind of the latest information is that there is a general prosecutorial KPI, and that is that if you, as a prosecutor, if you throw 100 people and get 100 people convicted, then great, you get a bonus or something. And to us, that's like, well, that seems perverse. Actually, there should be violent crime priorities, and everything else is a distraction. So we'll potentially go through that process as well, and then it could even be through the police. To the police minister and so on, and to ask them about how they approach the issue. The reality is that, yes, politicians do ignore these things, and that's why the approach that we adopted was mass, because if you send an email, it's very easy to ignore that. But if a lot of people send you the same concern and say, listen, there's this Section 12 initiative, you have to put it on your agenda, and your inbox is filled with that, then simply out of kind of probability, the chances of that thing being focused on is increased. It's not a silver bullet by any means, but that is one way to do it. And certainly we are now in a new policy paradigm after the election, which is that given that the ANC cannot just do whatever it wants anymore, it doesn't have that 50% majority. It might manufacture one through a coalition and so on, but that's still not really the same as the party having an outright majority. So there's the door. The door is potentially open now to have an actual conversation with government and to say, listen, these are the things that need to happen, and them actually listening rather than kind of just them saying, no, it's National Democratic Revolution, we're not going to listen to you. So things are more fluid now, and I think that is certainly a good thing, and that does enable an organization like the Free Market Foundation to take that next step. But yes, we are doing various kind of legally binding and tangible things in the background to try and really get a real focus on criminal justice reform.
Fantastic. I mean, that's something that I may have overlooked myself, but yeah, no, that's great. It's great to know that you guys are holding government accountable. So please, we'll keep a close eye on that for sure. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, Section 12 website is linked in the description below. Please go to it and give a pledge. The process is very easy. It literally takes you less than 60 seconds to complete the form. You don't have to write a letter. A letter is auto-generated for you. The letter is basically pressuring politicians to make crime top of their agenda. So yeah, very quickly, sign it, send it, and have your voices heard. Very surprised Sasa chat came through from Matthew Dixon. Martin, let me explain. Matthew Dixon is like my resident troll. He's quite a troll, okay? I don't know if he likes me, and I don't know if he dislikes me. I don't know if he's my friend, and I don't know if he's not my friend. I don't know if he's someone that really hates me or is just someone that, love-hate relationship. I let him be because he toes the line of trolly and then offensive. So he's very good and somewhat entertaining for the most part. But yeah, anyway, he's given me a 14 Rand Sasa chat, so thank you so much, Matthew Dixon. Any amount is greatly appreciated. So yeah, it's I'm not sure if that's like a really, supportive 14 Rand or he's mocking or I don't know, but it's fun and it's fine. Thank you either way. I've never met a troll that actually gives or donates to people. But yeah, thank you, Matthew Dixon, for the Sasa chat. It's greatly appreciated. Okay, apparently he says he loves me. Okay, love you too, buddy. All right, moving on to the next topic before we get into the whole Renaldo Gouws thing. Federalism. You guys, FMF, did an awesome roadshow. I watched the live stream and I watched the videos that you have on your YouTube channel about it. One thing in your speech, the speech that you and David Ansara gave, that really I want to just this is the main thing I want to talk about because I think it's the core of your message really. You guys were campaigning, you were talking about federalism before the elections. I believe FMF is still going to advocate for federalism. But one thing you said in your speech was that, the South African Constitution, as it stands right now, is a federalist constitution. I might be wording that incorrectly, but basically it's not a unity state, it's a federalist state. You can explain this better than I can, but I found that one of the most interesting things that you said in that speech. So please tell us more about that. And is federalism, do you think, added to that as well as federalism, do you think that is a viable solution for South Africa still?
Yeah, so our campaign for home rule, that was how the roadshow kicked that off, and that was from Port Elizabeth to Cape Town, and we stopped in various towns in between, talking to local communities, talking to local governments about the importance of political decentralization. And yeah, the key thing here is that South Africa should be more decentralized, not because we prefer it, but because the constitution is a federal one. Now, we hear a lot of talk about devolution. This is the D word that I kind of probably hate the most in policy. It's uh, it's it's almost there to kind of take attention away from what really needs to happen. So, what is federalism and what is devolution? Federalism very simply means that the various spheres of government, the tiers of government or the levels of government, have constitutionally entrenched authority. And that means that the central government cannot, on a whim, remove the authority of other spheres of government. So Ramaphosa cannot decide that Alan Winde no longer can call a provincial referendum. That is not his power. The Constitution gives Alan Winde the power to call a referendum. The Constitution gives him that, not Sir Ramaphosa, not the National Parliament, the Constitution. So that is, per definition, a federal constitution. Because the central government cannot take away authority from the more local spheres of government, nor can the local spheres of government take authority away from the central government. Um, and yeah, that's the federal constitution. Now, what is devolution? Devolution is a concept known in the unitary state. What is a unitary state? It is where the constitution recognizes effectively one government, and that is the central government, and any local governments that there might be, they might be mentioned in the constitution, but all their powers and authorities are determined by the central government. So you think of the various kind of countries in South America, Chile. I think Spain is officially a unitary state. The United Kingdom is the best example of a unitary state where only the central government really matters. And when is like the Scottish Parliament or the Northern Irish Assembly and so on, those exist only because the Central Parliament created them and gave them that authority that they have. So the UK is a very decentralized state, but it is still a unitary state. South Africa is a very centralized state, but it is a federal state. Now, a lot of people think that these two things must always go together, but it doesn't. And the reality is that in South Africa, we've been doing it wrong. We've always been governed by the ANC, which has always preferred a centralized form of government. And it has gone around telling people that, therefore, South Africa is a unitary state. It simply is not, per definition, a unitary state, but it governs it as if it is. And the sad thing that we as the Free Market Foundation noted is that the provinces and the municipalities, especially those that are opposition governed, or that used to be opposition governed, but currently none of them are opposition governed, those also kind of assumed that, yes, we are a unitary state and therefore we must not do anything that the central government might oppose. So what we said in our roadshow and what we continue to say in our campaign for home rule is, listen, you as provincial governments and you as local governments, you are not, Pretoria is not your boss. They didn't put you in power. You were elected. And therefore, you have a responsibility to your own constituents to do the things that they expect you to do. Now, yes, certain things you can't legally do, but there is also the doctrine of necessity, which is relatively well known in South African law and in other countries' legal systems. And that simply says that if you have to do something illegal to protect the vital interests of someone, of yourself or someone else, then you may do so. And the best example of this is if a child is suffocating in a car or succumbing to heat stroke because their parent is a junkie passed out around the corner, you are allowed to break open the car window and retrieve the child from the car. Under any other circumstances, you would have either committed a crime, which is kind of criminal damage to property, or you can be sued in tort law or the law of delict for damages that you've caused to this other person's property. But because there was a vital interest of the child at stake, you are perfectly allowed. The law tells you that you are allowed to break open that window and to take action. And we argue that you cannot arbitrarily say that that does not apply to local governments and to provincial governments. Of course it does. Crime is the best example. If there is a crime wave in your city, you cannot just say, well, my goodness, where is SAPS? SAPS isn't coming. I guess we won't do anything. You must actually do something. Even if the law says you can't, you must do so out of necessity. So that is kind of the core message that we've been trying to tell these more local dispensations is that, listen, we have a federal constitution. That means that diffused power is part of the logic of the system. So don't feel bad about going against Pretoria. And in fact, when there is doubt and when you are really being harmed by either Pretoria's inaction or by Pretoria's active kind of undermining of your interests, you are allowed, in fact, to take action to protect yourselves and your constituency. So yes, we will continue doing that. The GNU complicates things slightly, but only slightly, because our message is not only that provincial governments and municipal governments must do these things, which now they won't because they're all part of one government now, but we've also said that local business chambers, local community associations, they can also do a lot of things. And in many cases, actually, in law, they can potentially do more than a local government or a provincial government. You can, as a community, establish a community security entity. You're perfectly entitled to do that, even if a province is apparently not allowed to establish a police force. So you can establish a police force as a community, whereas Alan Windy thinks he can't. So there's a lot of room here for bottom-up federalization by communities, by business chambers. And yes, our message is don't wait. If you have a pressing issue to solve in your local community, you need to get in the mud, get dirty, and do it, rather than waiting, often in vain, for the government to ride in on a white horse and to save you.
I don't think the government is gonna save anyone,
Exactly.
but yeah, I think that's a riveting and very interesting, analysis of our constitution, because I don't think a lot of people realize that the constitution has room for federalism. It is a federalist constitution. You have studied this constitution, and you know the law quite well. So. And you know what? It's something that I don't know about other provinces, but at least for the Western Cape, one of my gripes with the DA, and I'll always give credit to the DA. They are doing the best they can within the Western Cape, for sure. Better run province than any other province in South Africa. I'll give credit to that. But I've always felt that they could do more. I've always felt like, you guys keep on saying, you want to do this, you want to protect this, you want to do this. And then when it feels like when you're at the cusp of doing something and the ANC says no, like for example, when they asked for devolution of the policing, right? And then the ANC was like, sorry, no. Then they just kind of like fold their hands and go, it's like, just do it. Just freaking do it, right?
Exactly.
What is going to happen? What is the worst that can happen? I don't know. And like you said, like, the whole necessity thing, how in principle, I don't think this has ever been argued in court officially, but in principle, how would it look if the DA is sitting in court saying, listen, we have rampant crime. We had to step in. We had to do what the ANC is not allowing us to do. Yes. I would love for the ANC to try and argue to the court as to why it wants crime to be high. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's steps that you have to take. So you can't be a cowboy. That's also a point we made. Yeah. You can't just say, well, we would like to do that and we're just going to take it. But that's not how it would happen, because in fact, the DA did ask for devolution, and not only of policing, but of rail, of the ports and so forth. And what I think, quite simply, the only thing that they need to do is they have to ask a few times. They need to keep a record and say, listen, we've asked very nicely. And we've documented the harm that has been caused to our local economy, to our local communities, by crime, by the railway infrastructure falling apart. Here's the charts, here is the stats. we gave reasonable kind of ultimatums and so forth. We certainly did not cause the problem in the first place. That's an important part of the defensive necessity. You cannot be responsible for causing the crisis
Obviously.
yourself, and so on, obviously. But if you kind of go through that process and you are reasonable at every step of the way, and the answer is still no, just because, well, politics and we have an ideology and yeah, we don't believe in federalism, the answer is no, then at that stage you can do the thing. And then when you go to court, and you will go to court and you might lose. I don't want to create the impression that this is just a guaranteed win. The federations of the world, the United States, Canada, Australia, all of them have been forged in the courtroom,
Mm.
where some people have lost, some people have won. South Africa has not gone to court over federalism yet, even though it has a federal constitution. So you will go to court and you will say, listen, we were reasonable. We went through every step that was expected of us, and still we were told no. And in the meantime, the Cape Flats are the most violent 10 square kilometers in the world. And we said, well, we're just going to kind of take action now. And if you put that to the court and you show that our police force actually brought crime down, and now the central government wants to take this away, I think, and I'm not a sage. I cannot tell you that. In fact, this is what the court would say. But I think the court will say we cannot take the solution that is working away, because there's a saying that possession is 9/10 of the law, and that doesn't just refer to property law. It also means that the facts weigh heavier ultimately than the law. The law is an important stabilizing force, but if the facts on the ground are that the Western Cape Provincial Police Force, which Becky Taylor said no to, has in fact cut crime in Mitchell's Plain, then I think the courts will find a way. They'll craft a remedy to allow that. They might not, but then you take your defeat and you try again in 5 years. That is how it works. That's how contesting kind of power in a democracy works.
Mm.
And unfortunately, as you pointed out, it seems that our erstwhile opposition parties, have not had an appetite for real tangible contestation. What
Yeah.
they've done is good, asking questions in parliament, pushing back, that's crucial. But at some point, you have to also kind of get your hands, if you don't want to get into the mud, at least get a little bit of dust on your hands.
Yeah.
That's a good start.
Yeah, no, and I would agree. I mean, I could go on and on about the DA and how spineless they are, but maybe the DA needs to hire people like you, Martin. I mean, I know you're safe in FMF, but maybe the DA needs to fire some of its lawyers and get some libertarian lawyers involved. So let's move on to the main, to the topic that everybody wants to talk about. Which is Renaldo Gouws. Full disclaimer, I'm a friend of Renaldo. I'm still a friend of Renaldo. I'm not here to debate whether or not what he said was or wasn't racist, the video, the contents of the video, or anything like that. I will give my opinion. I'll let Martin give his opinion, and then I think there's an aspect to this that I think is very alarming, which we'll get into in a moment. But I just want to say I do not condone, putting it on record now, I do not condone at all the use of the K word or the N word. I do think that was wrong. It was on a video that was deleted and somehow reappeared through the archive. I mean, that's hectic digging, man. That is like that's sus in itself. I'll be like, let's be honest about that. How much hate do you have towards the guy to even think of going like, oh, I'm gonna go into the archives and dig up this video? How did you even know about this video? Like, there's so many questions around that. But regardless, the video was found. It was released. It doesn't look good, man. And I did put out a post, which and here's well, actually, let me get your thoughts. Sorry, I'm jumping around, but let me get your thoughts, and then we'll get into, and then I'll explain the interesting aspect about this whole thing. So, what are your thoughts? You're a libertarian. I know you have your opinions on free speech, so this is going to be interesting. Martin, how do you feel about this?
Hmm. Yeah. So again, this is insanely complicated. There's nothing simple about this. Uh,
100%.
it's important to say yes. Those words are completely unacceptable. As an individualist, as a non-racialist, it's important to me above anything else really that each person be treated according to the content of their character, their personality, rather than to some arbitrary inborn characteristic like their skin color. And those words kind of communicate that you're generalizing people into some kind of derogatory group. So yes, of course, those are bad words. Uh, but, and there is a but, and I mean, everyone obviously assumes that the but is coming. The but is this. This happened, I think, 16 years ago. 16 years ago, or I think it was
14.
2014 years ago,
Yeah.
those years, my high school years, I did something much worse than what Ronaldo did. I was a communist. Now, that is just me considering myself a communist is
You were a
significantly
communist?
worse. In high school, yes, I
Oh
was.
my word! I've got to
I,
get you back
I,
on the show, and we got to talk
I
about that.
couldn't do anything about it. I didn't understand communism, but in my heart of hearts, I regarded myself as a communist. Now that is much worse. That what I did there is leagues worse than what Ronaldo did. He said some bad words. I endorsed an ideology that killed 300 million people in the previous century. So I did something far worse. But I'm not to blame for that anymore because it's 14 years ago. That's the first but. We all do bad things. And if Julius Malema stopped singing Kill the Boer, as he promised he would, in 2004, I would have forgiven him. I would have said, let bygones be bygones. He stopped doing it. Ronaldo stopped doing those things. He stopped. He stopped doing it. Now, that's the first but. The second but is that he didn't mean it. He was not sincere. He was pointing out that if in a country if the legal system allows Julius Malema to sing Kill the Boer um, freely, then why can't white South Africans also say such vile, disgusting, murderous things? Why can't that be the case? That is the point he was making. Now he didn't mean it. He used extremely crude language that even if I wanted to make that point, I would not use that language. But he was not being sincere. Now racism, for it to exist, has to be sincere. You cannot be an insincere racist. You cannot be, as has become a common idea amongst the insane leftist woke mob that exists around the world. You cannot unconsciously be a racist. You cannot be a racist without intending to be a racist. That is not how it works. You have to have racial animus. You have to be aware of that fact. You cannot be a racist by accident. Now, Ronaldo did not mean what he was saying in a racist sense, which is the same as a comedian using those same words when telling a joke. That is not racist. They are uh, communicating a certain message that is not intended to be racist. Now, yes, a lot of people say that Julius Malema does also not intend to be racist when he says Kill the Boer. But he was asked by advocate Mark Oppenheimer on the stand in the Equality Court, what is it that you mean? And he explained in detail, in crisp detail, exactly what he means. He said that he feels no remorse for white farmers who are killed. He said that one day, so he said in that TV interview that he's not calling for the mass murder of whites right now. He might do so at some point. Advocate Oppenheimer gave him the benefit of the doubt and said, okay, listen, we're here now. Please clarify. Clearly, you didn't mean it. Please clarify to us what you meant. And he said that I might do it. He said it might be someone else, but it might be me. He said it in court in front of the judge that he might call for white genocide. And he also said that if the decision was made to kill all the whites in South Africa, then he will be a good constitutionalist and he will only do it if they adopt a constitutional amendment. This Julius Malema explained. He explained how sincere he is when he says things like
Yeah.
kill the Boer. When Renaldo Gouws was asked what he meant. He explained that he was pointing out the hypocrisy when we have this double standard in our legal system. And he explained that he is not, in fact, a racist, which everyone who knows him knows. He has spent his whole career working towards non-racialism. He has, I faintly recall, he had various charities that he supported with primarily black beneficiaries. This is not the things that a racist does. But again, yes, the words he used to make his point were very crude. I would have advised him against it. It was 14 years ago. We were all different people 14 years ago. He deleted the video. He apologized. The witch hunt for him is wrong. Now, if you ask me if Renaldo meant what he said, then the exact same principle applies that I apply to Julius Malema, and that is that he must be in prison. He must be in prison. But that is not what is happening. And yes, just to bring it back to libertarianism, which is the complicated point, Joe, is that freedom of expression is not absolute. It is basically absolute up until the moment you threaten violence against someone else, because then you're not engaged in expressing yourself anymore. You have gone from the realm of expression into the realm of action when you incite people and when you threaten people against their vital interests, their lives, their liberty, and their property. And on this standard, Julius Malema qualifies undoubtedly and clearly, not only for his racist remarks, but his party has been engaged in various violent confrontations with the police and with civilians and with journalists. It is a violent entity. And Renaldo Gouws does not qualify because he is not violent. And what he said was meant to be ironic and to point out hypocrisy. So, yes, I have a lot to say about this and about freedom of expression, but that's in a nutshell currently where my thinking is, Joe.
Well, yeah, and you kind of touched on where I want to go with the conversation, because again, I'm not here to debate whether or not it was or wasn't racist in a sense of, or specifically what he said. I mean, there's no argument that he used racial slurs, and we both agree that's not cool. But what is interesting, man, like, it's like you've put it so nicely, and let me just get my thoughts on this very quickly. So what is really concerning to me in our society right now is that the hate for an individual is so strong that people are willing to go back in time to find a tweet, a video. Like, I don't know if you remember this girl that was, I think her name was, I can't remember her name. But she was a white girl going for, or trying to go and enter the Miss South Africa.
Bianca,
And yeah, Bianca,
Kubi, I think,
something like
yeah.
that. And they found, I don't know who found a tweet that she had used the N-word, but she was quoting a song. And she was young at the time that she made that tweet. She was like 12 years old. She was a kid. She didn't know any better. She didn't know the ramifications of what would happen. And again, she was quoting a song. Again, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm just saying this is another example of something that happened. Like, this girl did something years ago. It's being brought up. She lost everything. She lost her modeling career. She was not allowed to be part of the Miss South Africa. Like, she was shamed horribly. Now, what's happening to Renaldo Gouws is also maybe on a grander scale, because he's an MP or whatever. He became an MP, and now people go back. The hate, they go back. I called it the Renaldo deranged syndrome. Like, they go back, and again, how you thought of looking at archives on YouTube? Like, wow, that's hectic, dude. Like, you really spent time. How many hours do you have in a day? Damn. And you find that one video in this archive, and cleverly edited, by the way, to create this mass hysteria. And then, anyway, so this is the concern I have with society, right? Is that when we hate someone so much, we're going back in time to try and paint someone as a brush, or paint them in a certain light, right? Again, 14 years ago, as you said, we're different now. Anybody with a level-headed mind will say, yes, that was a very stupid thing to do in the past. Is he the same now? People are acting like he said this stuff yesterday. And it's like, no, like he's not, and they're claiming that he's racist right now and all that stuff. And it's like he was being hyperbolical. Number one, and number two, he hasn't said that stuff ever again. And I don't even know if he said it, like if he used that shock value before the video, right? So to get to my point, I'm concerned with society when they start digging into the past of people and crucifying people for something that some people might think is wrong. But at the same time, you're not crucifying other individuals that have done far worse things, right? I mean, there's a ANC MP that raped, I can't remember if it was a little girl or something, and he was still working at the ANC. Nobody, like, there was a bit of an outcry about that. Everybody was like shocked or whatever, but nobody, there was no petition to have him out of ANC or Parliament or MP or whatever it is, or have him fired from the ANC. There was no outrage on social media to the point that we're seeing with Renaldo Gouws. Nothing, right? Just a little bit of a news article, and then quietly it went away. And I can think of other examples. Kill the Boer is another example. Like you've mentioned it now. It's just, I don't know, man. I'm worried about society. I'm worried about this cancel culture, where it's going. You're you're a legal expert, and does this hold up in court? Is this something that someone can use against him and say, like, listen, 14 years ago you said it?
Well, so the so-called Human Rights Commission has filed a complaint against him at the Equality Court. So yes, there is a process that has started. Now, if he's found guilty I think the Human Rights Commission is using the Equality Act. So in the Equality Act, hate speech is a civil wrong. So you would potentially pay a fine, or you would certainly be forced to apologize again. But that would be a great injustice if the Human Rights Commission goes after him, when it has said on record that it will not go after Julius Malema for actually and sincerely inciting mass racial murder. So the Free Market Foundation went to the Supreme Court of Appeal in September of last year as an amicus curiae, a friend of the court, in the AfriForum versus Julius Malema matter. And we didn't get into the weeds of whether Malema was guilty of hate speech. He certainly was. But our concern was that there's different rules for different folks. And that does not compute in a constitutional democracy, and certainly not one that says it subscribes to equality before the law, which is such a grand, important value in South Africa's context. We have this long history of no equality before the law, and now we have a constitution that really puts it beyond any doubt that there has to be equality before the law. But then institutions like the Human Rights Commission just say, well, Julius Malema is black, so he gets to say it. And the Human Rights Commission did say that. But if you're some white guy on the beach in Greece with some guy you have no power that no one's ever heard of, then the book gets thrown at you. Now, that's not, everyone says that me saying this means that I'm condoning what the white guy is saying, and I'm kind of just against Malema because he's black and he's a fighter for social justice or whatever. But no, I mean, the protagonists and the antagonists here are kind of irrelevant to me. The only concern is that the same standard must apply to all. Now, you said you're concerned about society, and I think that's right. But to me, it's less about the mob. So the mob is going to be the mob. There is always a mob. The woke mob is the newest version of it. There was a conservative mob in the 1990s in the West. The panic around Satanism and pornography. There's always a mob. The question is, how do you respond, and whether you respond. Now, with the woke mob, we have not risen to the occasion yet. And let me preempt let me preempt myself here by saying that the DA is a private organization and it can choose to associate and disassociate from who it wants. If it wants to suspend or fire Renaldo, that is entirely its prerogative. I don't think anyone can say that they're not allowed to do that. However, how a entity deals with the woke mob is a very important show of character. If you entertain the woke mob, then you are contributing to what you said about society, the social collapse of the standards around freedom and kind of this elevation of being offended. If you are offended, and all of us are always offended about something, me included, there's always something to be offended about, even deeply offended about. But elevating that to a binding concern for everyone, just because I am offended by something that's happening, does not mean anyone else has to do anything about that. It can never mean that. Me being offended is my problem. That is always going to be my problem. That is how it should work. We have elevated being offended to a point of national concern where everything must be dropped until people stop being offended. Now, we are allowing that to happen. We as society are allowing that to happen. The DA in this case is allowing that to happen, and they're not the only ones. Many other, I think, very good organizations have succumbed to the woke mob. They say, my goodness, please just apologize, please just stop. And when you do that, you feed the mob. I ran a little poll earlier on Twitter asking, does the fact that Ronaldo apologized, does that mean anything? Does that mean you're going to stop now? Do you accept his apology? Does the fact that the DA suspended him from parliament, does that mean you forgive the DA? And the answer is virtually, I mean, the woke people are out for me because I'm now defending Ronaldo. So they all voted, they all came and voted, and they said no, of course we don't forgive him. So it doesn't help. Succumbing to the woke mob fuels the fire. It does not help. If Ronaldo really feels, or anyone else really feels remorseful and really feels they did something wrong, then of course you must apologize. That's the moral and the right thing to do. But just because there's a tiny kind of a small group of very vocal people on Twitter, and remember, just remember, the outrage we're seeing now is digital outrage, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. I do not hear riots down the street buying for anyone's blood. No one cares except the EFF millions on Twitter. Those are the people who are caring. And succumbing to that crowd, knowing that you succumbing actually does not do anything other than make it worse, is your fault. That is your fault. It is not the fault of the EFFers on Twitter. They are doing exactly what we expect them to do. They are being principled wokeists. Good on them. This is what they are meant to be doing. But succumbing to them, that is the problem. How we rise to the occasion, how we deal with that threat really to civilization, that is the important thing. And I don't think we're quite there yet. I think in recent years, there's been a little bit of a turn in the West. It's not here yet. I think it's going to come here. There's been a little bit of a turn against the woke mob.
Yeah.
And the more we de-emphasize being offended, the more we de-emphasize you being entitled to just get your way. And I include myself. If I'm offended, I should not just get my way. This is kind of basic stuff. Once we take that thing off its pedestal, then yes, society can start kind of building towards freedom again. And I always say that the 1990s were almost the best time for this, when black people could be racist against white people and white people could be racist against black people. And it was just like, well, it's a new free era. We've desegregated. We don't have apartheid anymore. Yeah. It's not law anymore. This is now just people being douchebags. And in a free society, you're allowed to be an asshole. Yeah. And that is a healthy society where assholes get to be assholes and decent people get to be decent people. We've moved away from that because we're giving in to one side of this. And that's how I think that's how you save society. You get equality before the law. That's key. You can't apply different rules for different folks, but then you also take being offended off its pedestal. That's absolutely crucial.
Well, you raise a good point there with the equality before the law, because that's, I think, everybody's fear. I mean, there's reports coming in. Some people have been commenting in the live chat saying that apparently a legal expert has weighed in on this Ronaldo situation and said that he could face jail time for what he has said. Your thoughts on that?
I think the time difference kind of makes that quite unlikely. I think you'll need to find a very very specifically insane judge, and we do have some of those, but we don't have a lot of those. You'll need to find a very particularly insane judge to send someone to prison for words that they said 14 years ago. Now that doesn't mean there's no risk of that, and there's certainly a risk of that. Under the Equality Act, there is no risk of that. Under the common law doctrine of crimen injuria, there is a risk of that. I think I think both Vicky Momberg and Penny Sparrow were sentenced to some jail time.
Yeah.
So that is possible.
But could you
Um,
argue context in that regard? Because I know you're laughing. I know why you're laughing. But like hear me out. Just hear me out. I know where you're going to go with it. Just hear me out. Okay? Context, okay, some people say is important, right? And stop laughing. And this is a serious issue, Martin. Okay. So context, some people would say, is important, right? So Vicky Mumberg and the other Penny Sparrow, whatever, they said what they said. There was context there. It was given. They found them guilty. They went to jail. Whether or not there was right or wrong is debatable, and people still have discussions about that. But they did say horrible things. Here we have a video where a man was basically pretending to be a persona. That was Rendir's persona, was to be, aggressive and obnoxious and shock factor and all that stuff. Something which he admits in that video. So, in terms of context, where he explains why he said what he said and that he doesn't mean it and all that stuff, he's comparing what Julius says, how it makes him feel when Julius says kill the boar or whatever. Would that hold up? Would that be beneficial if the court looks at the entire video and the entire context? Do you think there's a fighting chance for Ronaldo?
yeah, look, I think he's going to land on his feet just in general. I think even if he kind of loses in court, I doubt he'll go to jail, and I think he's going to carry on. I hope he doesn't let this kind of dissuade him too much. He still has a lot to contribute to our society going forward. But yeah, so the courts have to take all relevant factors into account, and those are certainly relevant factors. Him explaining that this is a persona, that's a relevant factor. Him explaining that this is pointing out the hypocrisy of what our legal system had done up to that point, that's relevant. But my concern is that in these cases specifically, and our courts are good in other cases, in these cases specifically, the courts they like specific context and they dislike other ones. So everyone says that Malema is not committing hate speech because of the historical context, but somehow Penny Sparrow and Vicky Momberg committed hate speech and there was no context there. There's always context. That's kind of why I laughed. It's like people point out there's a context. It's like, yes, of course there's a context. There's always a context. There cannot ever not be a context. So pointing it out is pointless. The question is, does it satisfy the requirements of the hate speech test? In the case of Ronaldo, I think it absolutely does not. But our courts have shown themselves to be very flexible in twisting the law to meet the situation that they want. So just briefly, the test for hate speech in South Africa is that you have to advocate hatred, number one, based on race, number two, and you have to incite harm. So that's hate speech. Ronaldo maybe meets one of them on the basis of race. He did not advocate hatred. He did not incite harm. Not hate speech. Criminal injuria is a
Well,
little bit.
sorry, but some would
Mhm.
argue that his beginning video is kill the K word,
Yes,
kill the N word. So that is
yes.
inciting.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, yes, but he wasn't actually saying that, like we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
So yes, the court will have to actually agree with that interpretation that he's making a point rather than actually he's not actually saying kill. He's not
Mm.
he's not instructing that it's not an incitement. It's he's talking about something,
In the
and
same
then the same would
way,
apply.
the Kill the Boer is like a struggle song. So he's not actually meaning Kill the Boer. It's just a
Yeah,
struggle song.
yes.
Yeah.
I
And
fully support using Julius's defenses in favor of Ronaldo. I think the Ronaldo's lawyer must absolutely do that to show the ridiculousness of it all. But criminal injuria is a bit more difficult. That's just about you have objectively harmed the dignity, the dignitas, the kind of
mm,
most intimate nature of a person with your comments. Now, in the past, before Vicky Momberg, I think you couldn't kind of say that this person said something that offended all of us, and we are now so kind of offended and that they must now be found guilty. Before that, there has to be an interaction between you and someone. Like
mm,
there has to be it's person to person. That's criminal injuria. Vicky Momberg changed that, or the court changed that, and said yes, you can in fact be found guilty of criminal injuria for blasting an opinion into the ether, and so they changed how criminal injuria works. So that's a bit more dangerous.
mm,
Now, the most dangerous thing here is the Hate Speech Act, which was signed into law very recently.
mm.
Now, it wasn't law when Ronaldo said those things in 2009, so it cannot be applied to him as far as I'm
Ah,
concerned, and
yeah.
I'm relatively certain that it cannot apply to him. But as I've said, I have a master's degree in law. I'm working on my doctorate in law. I'm very invested in the legal system and in the idea of jurisprudence. But I do not trust our courts.
Mm,
I think our courts have been very, very bad on this topic. And the Free Market Foundation will probably be in more cases in the future to say, listen, guys, judges, what is happening here with this unequal application of the same standard to people based on how they look is completely untenable. You cannot continue doing this. But as we stand now, they still do that.
mm,
So I'm very concerned about that. But like I said, I think the time aspect, the fact that he deleted the video years ago, and that he has apologized and that he has done many things between now and then that, in my view, very objectively, shows that he is not in fact a racist and that the Ronaldo of today does not share those sentiments to the extent that you can say that those were sentiments. I think that 8 out of 10 judges would say, listen, yes, you did wrong, apologize, you're remorseful. Maybe they fine him something and he has to pay that fine to some charity or something. Maybe that happens. If he goes to jail, I mean, listen, then our problem is far bigger than kind of GNU or whatever. Then we have a very actively repressive state that is really ultimately jailing political dissidents. I mean, he's an
yeah.
opposition party politician who said something years ago, and now the regime throws him in jail for something that is obviously no longer relevant. So then our problems are no longer Ronaldo's problems. Then we have a
Yeah.
far bigger kind of political, I would say, kind of crisis, liberty crisis on our hands that dwarfs anything that has come before. So I don't think that's likely. I think he's going to land on his feet. There will be some legal kind of drama now, but I think he's a very capable man. I think he's potentially emotionally prepared for stuff like this. This is probably his worst rodeo, but it's not his first rodeo.
Yeah.
So I think Ronaldo will ultimately be okay. I certainly hope he'll be okay. Like I said, I think he has a lot more to contribute, and I'm looking forward to what he has to contribute.
Yeah. And I think that's a good place to end. It's kind of a positive there. And I mean, we chatted about the things I wanted to chat about. I know everybody is of the opinion. Well, not everybody. Sorry, misspoke there. A lot of people on X or Twitter, especially, are of the opinion that he needs to be jailed and he needs to be. Which, I mean, again, Twitter, not a reflection of real life. I think any level headed person who watches the full video, while, yes, what he used in the beginning is shameful and not right, personally, I would never use those words to get that point across. So that is you can't argue that. Just don't use those horrible words. But like you said, it was done years ago. It was deleted. Um, I think he's felt enough shame about it. I'm sure he's very apologetic. He's changed. He's a different man now, and that's something that I think, again, you know, we as a society, as human beings, need to take that stuff into consideration. Whether something you did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, doesn't matter. People change. Martin, I forget how old you are, but I'm sure 10 years ago you were not, well, you said it yourself, you were a communist. Like
Not
in high
quite 10
school.
years ago. Many years ago, I was a communist. Yes.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I was a libertarian. Yeah.
Well, you were a communist, right? At one point in your life. I mean, compared to what you believe in now, that's completely different, right? We change as we grow older.
Just so I'm on the record, just on the record, I do apologize for having been a communist, and I'm very sincere about that. Like, I'm sorry.
I accept your apology.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like, I had different views when I was young too, like when I was 15, 16. Of course, when I was, yeah, I don't think social media wasn't really a thing when I was 15 or 16. I think Facebook only came into when I was like 20-ish, 19, somewhere there. But regardless, whether I were 20 or now when I'm 35, like I'm not the same person. Definitely not. I'm a father now. I have different beliefs. Like, I mean, there was a time when I didn't want kids. Now I have one. You know, it's people change and they're not the same. Yes, there are horrible people that exist on this planet that will never change. But then you will see that, right? Like someone who doesn't change, who is a racist, is going to continuously, consistently be a racist, right?
Exactly.
That's how you know someone hasn't changed, and then they deserve to have consequences. They deserve to not be part of this society. If they're a murderer, a serial killer, whatever, a rapist, right? Who but there are people that can reform, and there are people that can change. Gayton McKenzie, someone who I think shouldn't be an MP, right? Has a shady past. He claims he's different now. I don't trust him personally, but at the same time, has he done anything recently that's criminal? I don't know. So I can't say yay or nay on that one. My point is, people do change, and when they don't change, it's very evident that they don't. That's the point I'm trying to make. So to crucify people who are not the same anymore for something they did in the past is wrong. I said it. It's wrong. I'm sorry. It's wrong. That's my opinion. And y'all can hate me for it if you want.
Many will.
Yeah, I'm sure, especially the wokes of Twitter. Martin, can I just have you for just a few more minutes? I know we've gone way over time.
Yeah, sure.
But I just want to go on some of the, like I said, I didn't really see many questions. Sorry if I missed them. But just some comments that were coming in. Robert King said the GNU is falling apart quicker than I expected, and Balula Zilla, beefing with one another. The ANC Youth League telling the DA they can leave, etc. Sure, we would hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. So that's just a comment.
Words to live by. Absolutely.
Yep. Mark Rockshow, thank you, Mark, for tuning in. Is this that Joe guy's channel that loves Disney Star Wars?
You like Disney Star Wars, Joe? Seriously, disgusting, man.
I've had a change of heart, man. I don't like it anymore.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed Mandalorian season 1 and 2. I think that was its heyday, and then things have just gone horribly wrong. Hopefully we can move forward. Let's give the GNU a chance. That's from Gavin Calmer. And Debbie Murray saying, so who else could actually have rescued us? What exactly did the ANC offer? The DA? Not
No one
much.
is coming to rescue you. I think this is an important point. Never, ever, ever ask and wait for someone to come and rescue you.
Yeah.
You be the change you want to see in the world. Start trying to save yourself and your family and your community. You can't do so alone. Organize with those around you and try to solve the problems that face you and your local reality. And yes, we hope that politicians might help us at some point, but you are, as the gun folks say, and they're quite right, you are always your own first responder, and that
Yeah.
is never ever outsource the idea that someone else is responsible for you. And yeah, so the DA was never going to rescue us. It might help at some point, but yeah, rescue yourself. That's what it comes down to.
100%. And then Anonymous Alex says, do y'all think Afriform will pick up Ronaldo's case?
Not sure. I think it would be
Hard to tell.
cool,
Maybe
but I'm
FMF
not
will.
sure. It would be nice if we had a public interest litigating unit. That would be awesome,
Yeah.
but we're not quite there yet.
um, yeah, so what else? Okay, so I addressed that one already. Yeah, here's where someone said, just read an article on News 24 where legal expert says Ronaldo could possibly face jail time for those videos. This is seriously crazy stuff. It is. And then someone asked if you could give insight to that, which you did. Um, let's see. Oh, that was the name we were. Bianca
Mm,
Shkumbi. That was the
yes.
girl that was unfortunately attacked that way.
It's holding
Um,
people responsible for what they did as children. I mean, that's if she said it as a child and we were like standing around her, we wouldn't hold her responsible for that. But somehow, when she's adult, we hold her responsible for it
exactly. And
retrospectively. It's completely bizarre.
and apparently she explained that at the time it was like a trendy thing to do, like to
Mm,
copy lyrics
yeah, I
onto
mean,
on
it's still
and
people
say it
still do
out.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, Darren says there has been a feeling on social media around elections and a bit after that there is a Bell Pottinger type campaign, which is not out of the realm of possibility, considering that actors involved or the actors involved.
Of
Um,
course, of
yeah,
course. I
totally
mean, it's
possible.
no, it's absolutely happening. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the way that it's kind of the influencers and so on, kind of immediately after the election. I mean, I've been involved in some of these campaigns, not with Bell Pottinger, but with other marketing firms. I mean, it's not a conspiracy theory. This stuff happens. This is kind of part of public advocacy. So yeah, I promise you, this is happening. It's a
yeah.
fact. There's no need to kind of worry about it. But yeah, they're paying someone to kind of push these narratives, and
Mm.
that's fine. That's their agenda. They should do that. But it is happening. Yeah.
And DK saying everyone forgot about Andile from BALF threatened to kill white kids and women and their dogs. Very true.
Hmm.
Another, example of just how this country works sometimes.
Hmm.
So I don't see any other questions that I may have missed, and I've gone way over your time
No worries.
sorry, man. But thank you so much for giving me so much of your time and for this very interesting conversation. I think it went really well.
Mm.
Some hot topics that people are talking about today in South Africa. Hopefully, we gave some answers, some solutions, and yeah. Final thought as well from my side. I wish Ronaldo all the best. I really do. Like I said, I'm still his friend. I definitely don't judge him on a video that he did yonks ago. Not proud of it, not happy about it. It is what it is, but I do not think it reflects who he is today. He's always been kind to me, nice to me. He's never given me a reason to dislike him, and I'm not going to just jump on the bandwagon of Ronaldo hate because of a mistake that he did in 2009 or 2010. We've all made mistakes in our past, and I would hope that people would treat me with the same respect or etiquette or have I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, but just
Consideration.
consideration. Yeah, if I was ever in those shoes, I wouldn't be because I wouldn't use those racial slurs. But yeah. Yeah, Martin, is there anything you want to say in closing?
yeah, just if anyone's interested in following my work, I have my personal website. All my articles, I'm primarily a writer, are on there. So it's martinvanstaden.com. Please do follow the Free Market Foundation. We do work around freedom of expression, around hate speech, but primarily around economic freedom and private property rights and limited government. That's at freemarketfoundation.com. We're going to be very active now in this post kind of election environment that's very fluid. So please follow us. And yeah, I mean, what I've been saying now in these last few minutes, I just want to reinforce that. Thinking about the GNU and government and maybe the EFF or MK is going to come into power. Listen, ultimately, are our tyrants are some of the most incompetent people that have ever walked the face of the earth, and they can only win if we kind of lay down and let them win. So never succumb to defeatism or kind of hopelessness, as so many people often do, and they say it's over. Oh my goodness, tomorrow MK is in government. It's over. No, these people are stupid. They're dumb. So don't worry. But you
They're
have to
gonna
be active.
cancel you now, Martin. They're gonna cancel you so
I
hard.
I hope I'm uncancelable, but I guess everyone has at some point it catches up with you. But yeah, so I mean, ultimately, if you organize, if you know your neighbors, if you are involved with your community, uh, it, that alone already is going to propel South Africa towards prosperity. But if you make the mistake of thinking that you live in a prosperous Western society where government is mommy and that government is going to look after you, then you are going to suffer and you are going to have pain. That is not our society. Our society is better than that. We can actually take responsibility and we can actually own the things that are important to us. So do that. Rather do that than waiting for or sitting around seeing what the GNU is going to do. It's important. Politics is important. Take an interest in politics, but ultimately do not ever delegate your responsibility for your own welfare to the state. And I think, yeah, that's important. And please, if you agree with that sentiment, please follow us at the Free Market Foundation, and show us your support, because we want to be that voice for that sentiment in South Africa, especially given how things are turning out now.
Excellent, Martin. Would love to have you back on the show. Maybe in a few months' time, we'll see. Definitely, if the GNU implodes, I'm gonna have you back so that we can laugh. So, so once again, Martin Van Staden, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Martin Van Staden once again from the Free Market Foundation. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching. There's quite a lot of you tuned in. Before you go, if you're new to this channel, please subscribe, like this video, share it far and wide. I know it was a very long stream. I apologize, but there was a lot to talk about, and it's a very interesting conversation as well. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you for all the sausage chats as well. If you want to contribute monthly, consider becoming a member. Yeah, I think just looking at some of the comments that are coming in, thanks a million for an awesome stream. Have an awesome one, everyone. Thank you, Ruben, so much for tuning in. Helen, good to see you again. Not a laughing matter. No, it's not a laughing matter. Debbie Murray saying thank you, Joe and Martin. Awesome stream. Most grateful. Thank you so much. For tuning in. Good to see you. Some friendly or familiar faces, I should say. Joking Atheist, thank you for tuning in. Matthew Dixon, of course, is in the chats. Voot, also here. Thank you so much. The Mork Rock Show. I don't like... okay, I haven't watched the Acolyte. I want to watch it just to be disappointed, if that makes sense. I've watched a lot of reviews. I'm not amped for it. That's probably why I haven't watched it yet. It's probably like, I know it's going to be crap. I think I've accepted the fact that I'm just going to like the original Star Wars. Those are the OGs, and I've lost faith in Disney ever turning it around or making it what it was. I think that is evident now. So there you go, Mark. I hope that makes you happy, and I mean that sincerely. I do. But actually, we should probably do a podcast about it. Hopefully, next month we can get together and we can talk about it. I definitely want to watch The Acolyte so we can talk about it. So yeah, one of 44 was here. Thank you guys so much. There's so many to go through and chat. Okay. Have a fabulous evening, you guys too. Yeah, man. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. It really is amazing. Thank you guys for watching. I'm gonna leave it at that. Yeah, thank you guys so much. Hopefully, we'll be able to do more of these live streams in the future. But Newsflash is back, ladies and gentlemen. Episode released today. An episode is coming out tomorrow. Still need to work at it though. Very interesting episode coming out tomorrow about the tobacco bill. Didn't have time to go into it with Martin Van Staden, but yeah, the tobacco bill, some interesting things happening with that one. So look out for that on the channel. Like I said, if you're new, subscribe. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. You guys have been awesome, and I will see you at the next one. Cheers.